Michael Patrick Shields is on the air.
Good morning, world.
Good morning, Michigan. A very pleasant Monday to you. Michael Patrick Shields, heard all across the state of Michigan. Later in the program, Donald Rumsfeld will join us, the former Secretary of Defense. He will be in Michigan tonight at the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Museum talking about his book, Known and Unknown, a memoir. And it's a private event tonight, though, invitees only. So that's why we're giving you Donald Rumsfeld here all across the state of Michigan. And he's got a big Michigan background. You may not know this. One of his early jobs in 1959, he was a staff assistant to Congressman Robert Griffin of Michigan. And then he was transition chairman for a guy called Gerald Ford, who became president. And later in the presidency, well, he was the chief of staff, and he was the Secretary of Defense, and he came back and was Secretary of Defense again for George W. Bush. And the rest, as they say, is history. He was in place during the September 11th attacks, and the book recounts all of it. So we'll talk with him. And you remember why is it called Known and Unknown? Well, you remember one of his most famous sayings. His press conferences in Washington, D.C. were not only, well, they were different and they were entertaining. And here's one of the things, they call him Rummy. And here's one of the things Rumsfeld is most famous for saying.
There are reports that there is no evidence of a direct link between Baghdad and some of these terrorist organizations.
There are known knowns. There are things we know we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. But there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't know.
Excuse me, but is this an unknown unknown?
I'm not.
Several unknowns, and I'm just wondering if this is an unknown.
I'm not going to say which it is.
Mr. Secretary,
I'm right here. I'm right here.
Yeah, that's Donald Rumsfeld. We have known knowns, we have unknown knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. So he went ahead and named his book. He's sort of a funny, cheeky fella anyway, but we'll talk with him later in the program. Rich Kincaid is going to be with us, too. He is a veteran sportscaster, and we're going to talk about whether or not the Spartans can still make the NCAA tournament or the Wolverines after this weekend. It's the first time in, 14 years that the Wolverines beat the Spartans twice in a single season in basketball. The game was 61-57 before a sellout crowd at Chrysler Arena. Tim Hardaway Jr. had 20 points. Kalen Lucas had 25. The experts said Kalen Lucas can get his 25 and Michigan can still win, and that's exactly what happened. The Wolverines have won 8 of their last 11, and that's the end of the Big Ten season for both teams. Ohio State is the Big Ten champion, and they all go to the Big Ten tournament in Indianapolis this weekend. So Rich Kincaid will join us. We'll talk about that later this hour, too. Mark Brewer is going to be with us coming up shortly, the chairman of the Michigan Democratic Party. There's already talk about the presidential primary in Michigan. Are we going to have an early primary? Is it going to cause all that trouble that it caused last time where our delegates weren't seated and so forth? We'll see what he's got to say about that coming up shortly. And Mike Hughes will join us, the TV critic for the Lansing State Journal and MikeHughes.tv. Mike Hughes has been telling me all along that he likes Piers Morgan, who was the guy who replaced Larry King on CNN. Well, Vanity Fair had an article, and they just excoriated Piers Morgan in this article. So we'll have a little talk about that. And I want to talk to Mike Hughes, too, about the passing of my friend Frank Cherkinian, who was the boss of Ben Wright and Pat Summerall and Ken Venturi and Jim Nantz and all the guys on the CBS golf team. And he also did football in the Kentucky Derby. He was an innovator. In fact, Frank Cherkinian, if you ever watch golf on television, was the guy who invented the scoring system of above and below par. Because if you're going to watch a tournament, how would you know what was going on? And so he came up with that system. And he died in West Palm Beach, Florida on Friday. And I almost wrote a book with him. I spent some time with him. He was living in Bel Air, California at the time. I went out there and spent the day with him and his wife, Lois. He took me to the Bel Air Country Club, and we sat around the big round table in the corner there near the swinging bridge. And Al Michaels, the ABC sportscaster, was there, and Mac Davis, the country singer. All these guys were sitting around the table. And Frank was, and he eventually decided just not to write the book because he didn't want to put the effort into it. He was having the life of Riley in his retirement, you know. He bought a golf club, and he moved to South Florida. and that's where he passed away. Emerald Dunes was the club that he bought, turned it private, and he used to play with Greg Norman and Rush Limbaugh and all those guys, and Frank Cherkinian passed away on Friday. If you want a little sample of what he meant to the world of sports and television, here is a small tribute to Frank Cherkinian.
Frank Cherkinian was a pioneer, universally renowned as the father of televised golf. For nearly 40 years, after moving from CBS News to CBS Sports in 1957, Cherkinian produced cutting-edge golf telecasts for the network, taking his seat in the production truck for 38 consecutive Masters tournaments, highlighting a career that culminated with induction into the Sports Broadcasting Hall of Fame in 2007. His countless contributions, which advanced the modernization of golf as a televised sport, included the first ever use of a blimp camera, painting the inside of holes white, and changing the game's scoring system to what we now use today, accomplishments that earned 4 Emmys and 2 Peabody Awards. Along with a passion for the game, Cherkinian possessed a dominant personality and an authoritative style, and the man who was respectfully given the nickname Ayatollah by his colleagues is perhaps best described in his own words. "I was probably the most brilliant and innovative son of a gun that ever worked in television," he once said. "I've done so many things, I can't remember half of them. But we will remember him." Frank Cherkinian was 84 years old.
We'll talk with Ben Wright, his dear friend who spoke with him only a day or two before he passed away last week. Frank Cherkinian was 84. Gary Austin is our anchorman this morning.
Yes.
Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. It's really remarkable. One guy was responsible for so much in a single sport. I never knew that.
Yep, it's true. Now, in a sadder note closer to home, in Fenville, the story that has made national news and touched everyone's hearts, the story of the young man who made the game-winning layup in overtime to make sure the Fenville basketball team would remain 20-0, undefeated, and then died of a heart attack at his young age.
That happened on Thursday. of
Wes
last week.
Leonard. Still, people are having a hard time coming to grips with this, and the basketball team had a practice on Saturday. They consulted with the family members, and they decided to go ahead with their game against Lawrence. And so they're going to have a state playoff game, and what they're going to do is they're going to move it to Hope College's DeVos Fieldhouse because there's overwhelming community response and national interest. He was 16 years old, and so tickets are available. Hope College is donating the use of the facility, and there's a large effort that has been made to pull this off. Tickets are available at Hope College, and you can buy them starting at 3 o'clock today, apparently, if you want to be in that game tonight. I can't even imagine the emotion that's going to be taking place in that field house when the fans, for both sides, show up for that game. The visitation was yesterday.
The fans remembering this and the short, eventful life of this terrific star athlete in Fenville for years, 16-year-old Wes Leonard. That's the story. I mean, the game is secondary. I mean, Wes Leonard is and remembering his short life is going to be, of course, the highlight tonight, and there's going to be a big crowd for sure at the DeVos Fieldhouse. You know, after he passed away, we knew autopsy results were going to be done relatively soon, and they were done, and we do have confirming results now from doctors. It was in fact a heart attack from an enlarged heart. That's what did it.
Meanwhile, a Grand Rapids Catholic Central High School basketball player is clinging to life after a Saturday night car accident. I'm sorry to say, 17-year-old Mary Lefevre is in critical condition. She crashed with another vehicle and hit a tree in the Grand Rapids suburb of Wyoming the night before. Her basketball team won its Class B district championship game over Comstock Park, and Sunday night there was a special mass to pray for her well-being. It's dreadful to hear these things happening to young people, and so we pass that along so that if you're inclined to pray, you will do that.
Yes, definitely.
17
we started last week's show right about this time talking about gasoline prices, how they keep going up. Every time we turn around, what happens? They keep going up. And here's the latest. We have the stats now from the AAA. The average price of a gallon of regular, no lead, up 33 cents in the last 2 weeks. Did you know that's the second highest jump of its kind on record.
Not done yet either, is it?
It sure isn't. This is just the beginning of perhaps and we hope not, but certainly all indications are with the summer driving season right around the corner, that combined with the fact of all this business going on in Libya and Mideast tensions and everything, the combination of the two will likely continue to head these prices in the wrong direction. By the way, nationwide, it's about $3.64 a gallon now. So
San Diego has the highest gas price, $3.87 a gallon. And the lowest price, Billings, Montana, $3.15 a gallon.
Yep, and the experts figure by summertime, odds are $4 plus.
You got some more news in you?
I do. Do you want me to stick around?
Can you come back in 4 minutes? There's plenty to catch up on.
I'll do that for you, MPS.
All right, he's Gary Austin. I'm Michael Patrick Shields. It's Monday morning. We're back in a flash. 23 minutes after the hour, Michael Patrick Shields heard all across the state of Michigan. Gary Austin, we had a bunch of stuff I wanted to get to here before we get rolling this morning with all of our conversations. Space Shuttle Discovery undocks from the International Space Station this morning. Going to be coming back to Earth for the last time. And they're going to land at Kennedy Space Center on Wednesday, and that's the same day Endeavour, the sister ship, is going to roll out to the launch pad for its final mission, and that's going to be in April. We really are getting close to the end of the space shuttle program.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. We've been talking about it for so long, but the end is near for sure, and the Smithsonian is going to be home for the final shuttle there. It's going to be quite a sight. I imagine that's going to be a bit. It's a terrific place to start with, but boy, what a great draw.
I'm going to miss these the space shuttle and the launches for sure. Yeah. Everybody knows that.
For sure. I've got to ask you, what do you think about, remember the Susan B. Anthony dollar years ago? It didn't fly for whatever reason, but European countries, you travel. Yeah, I remember when I went to London, you dollar bills, unheard of virtually. Everything's in coins over there, and pretty much the same. Pretty much all around continental Europe. And now they're talking, serious talk now, about absolutely getting away with dollar bills and having coins instead. And word has it, if we did that, we'd save a ton of money.
Yeah, when we broadcast from Ireland on St. Patrick's Day, courtesy of the resorts of Tullymore, you will see that the euro is a pound. I say pound coin. In Britain, it's a pound coin. It used to be a punt in Ireland, and it's a euro coin, so that they don't have paper. And apparently somehow this would save billions of dollars for the U.S. government if we could go to the dollar coin.
That's the word, but, we've tried this before, but we're just it's hard. Old habits are hard to break, and I think
what would we do with all the, I guess vending machines could take the dollar coin.
I guess. And what would happen with those dollars? I guess slowly but surely they'd phase them out.
I don't like having coins jangling around in my pocket is the only thing. Maybe maybe some people don't mind, but for me, I don't like that. It bugs me.
Well, of course, a dollar coin would have to be bigger. Remember the Susan B. Anthony thing? It was kind of shaped sort of funny.
Yeah.
It was thicker.
Yeah.
They were heavy. So I don't know
That's
how that
what
would
the pound coins are like in the United Kingdom, too.
Yeah.
Unemployment rate is down to 8.9%. That's the lowest reading since April of 2009 in America.
However, real numbers closer to 15%
you always want to
because
rain
the
on our
government
parade.
no longer counts those
who've given up
looking completely. Yeah.
You always say that.
Well, we have to, though.
The Dow lost 88 points on Friday. The NASDAQ dropped 14, and the S&P lost 10. Congressional panel, this ought to be interesting, Thursday, is going to talk about the radicalization of American Muslims. That ought to get some people riled up, huh?
Yeah, this is a real sensitive thing, and we've heard talk about this before. It's the government is trying to really tread a fine line here on how to handle this sort of thing. And I think they want to be collective in this. They want to let people know, Muslim Americans, look, we're on your side. We want to get some sort of dialogue going so we don't run the risk of painting everybody or too many into a negative corner. So the government's trying to handle this in such a way that nobody gets offended.
Well, you ready for this? People are offended. Some NAACP supporters are going to boycott Detroit's NAACP fundraiser because they're going to honor Kid Rock, and they say that doesn't mesh with the civil rights group's goals. Why? There's this thing called the Great Expectations Award. It's an annual dinner in Detroit. 10,000 people usually show up at Cobo Center. However, Kid Rock uses a Confederate flag in some of his shows. And so there are people who say this is a slap in the face for civil rights in the country. It's a symbol of hatred and a symbol of bigotry. He says it represents Southern rock and roll. But he's
Oh.
from Michigan, so what does he care about Southern rock and roll? I
So
don't know.
that was Kid Rock's response to
Yeah.
his use of the Confederate flag.
Yeah, he says it doesn't mean anything. It just means Southern rock and roll. But that's a sensitive topic. Kwame Kilpatrick is expected in Detroit today. He's going to take the stand in an evidentiary hearing in the Tamara Green lawsuit, which is still going on. So he'll be taken out of the cell and put on the stand. And Governor Rick Snyder, you know, we've been talking a lot about these tax incentives for movie makers.
Yes.
And you would think, wouldn't you, that people who have a chance to run into, George Clooney and Marissa Tomei and all the other stars, Richard Gere and the others that have been running around Michigan, Hugh Jackman, you would think people would back giving them the tax credits, right? Well, there is an Epic MRA poll. 46% of those surveyed think the movie incentives are bad policy.
46%.
More than think it's good.
Wow.
People don't want to spend the money that it takes to get the movie makers here. I'm surprised by that, aren't you?
You know, I am, especially all the publicity this has been getting. But, you know, Governor Snyder, his administration has been making it clear.
Cost too much.
The cost and giving some tax breaks and others not. It's sort of an unfair sort of thing. I just wonder if Rick Snyder's message, making it clear from the administration's viewpoint that we want more of a level playing field on tax breaks and who gets what, maybe that sort of thing is resounding with mainstream Michigan, and that's what's coming out and being translated in this latest survey.
That motorcycle festival I know you were looking forward to in downtown Grand Rapids, the River City Bike Week.
Well, I'm not a motorcycle rider, but we know many in Michigan are. So what's the latest
It's
on
been
that?
scrapped.
Oh, officially.
Yeah, they're going to do something smaller out at Lake Odessa.
Oh, right. Okay. So
Nobody
that's-
really,
yeah.
they just didn't take to it, did they? They
Okay.
didn't want the noise and the
Yeah.
crowds and all that kind of thing downtown. And so there were some people who said, hey, they're just going to bomb in here and, use up our resources and collect all the money and leave. So that's not going to happen.
Now, we heard that they were going to do away with the idea in downtown Grand Rapids itself, but the Lake Odessa thing, that's still on.
Yeah, it's going to be a
okay.
smaller event out there
Small
instead.
event. Okay, so we're going to have something, sort of a compromise. I guess when the story broke, everybody's happy, at least for you can't. It's one of these stories. You can't keep everybody happy all the time, so you try to keep as many people happy as possible some of the time, and I think that falls in that category.
We never let the birthday of a beautiful woman pass without taking note. Taylor Dane is 49 today, the pop singer, and Rachel Weisz is 41. You would have seen her in The Constant Gardener and Definitely Maybe, Fred Claus, and About a Boy. Happy birthday, darlings, to both of them.
I've
Yes?
got to ask you, as
Yes?
a football fan, what's up with the NFL? Are they going to walk out on us or what?
The deadline came and they had a 24-hour extension, and now they have a 1-week extension that's taken place.
So
and,
word has it,
yeah.
if this shuts down, this could be a long one, right?
Yeah,
Is that what they're
well,
saying?
we talked with Brian Rooney last week, who's on the board of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but he lives in Michigan, and he said that he thinks it's possible we would lose half the season.
Oh,
But
geez.
that was before this 1-week extension. I'm encouraged, are you not, that if they bothered to have a 1-week extension, they must be both intent on solving it, and two, they must be close to some kind of solution. They must be making some
That's
progress.
a good sign, because if they were miles apart, they just say forget it. Or if things were really getting tenuous between both sides, that's when, or they're getting mad at each other.
Yeah.
That's another reason why one side or the other, or both, would just agree, let's just shut this thing down and let's walk away and forget it. But yeah, the fact that they've agreed to keep on talking, extending this out. By the way, this is the issue here is over how to divvy up billions of dollars in annual revenue, extending benefits for retired players. Also, talk about expanding the regular season to 18 games.
Yeah, you
Some
take away
say
2
that's-
preseason and you
yeah, I
add
don't
2
know.
regular season, and the players, they get busted up as it is.
Is that too long, 18-game regular season?
That's
do
what
you
the
think?
players say.
Yeah.
They would need more players because you'd have body parts
Oh.
laying all over the field.
But think of all that money, and that's what the owners, I guess, are looking at.
Mark Brewer, Gary, is on the other end of our line, the chairman of the Michigan Democratic Party. Good morning to you.
Morning, Michael Patrick.
We, both of us, Gary and I, saw a story about Michigan's presidential primary. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? It's almost here again. And there's some talk that we might try to move the date up again or not. And, that caused a lot of trouble last time. It was very confusing to all of us. Can you bring us up to date? Remind us, A, what happened last time, and B, what's likely to happen this time?
Well, last time, the state primary in which both parties participated was scheduled earlier than the national party rules of both parties permitted. and so there was a dispute about the seating of the delegates. In the end, the entire Michigan delegation was seated, and I think half of the Republican delegation was seated as well. Now, this time around, Michael Patrick, actually contrary to what that article said or implied, the Michigan Democratic Party has made no decision about when we're going to hold our process, whether we're going to go early and participate in our primary or nominate our delegates in some other fashion.
The point is that New Hampshire and Iowa always get to go first, and we think that's not fair because they get lots of attention, and then it sort of maybe sets the tone for some of the candidates. In other words, if you get a big win in those states, you can build on it and be able to raise money better and maybe get some more momentum.
Yeah, there's no question that everybody, not just us here in Michigan, feels that it's unfair that those two states have a monopoly on going first. They get the lion's share of attention, enormous amount of money gets spent in those states. So the system does need reforming. But again, we've not made a decision yet about when or how we're going to select our delegates.
Well, I guess, Mark, the point is we don't want to be dead last, right?
Well, I got to tell you, on our side of the aisle, we're going to renominate the president. So it's far less of an issue for us than it is for the Republicans, who've got a very wide open race on their side. We're firmly in support of the president, and we're going to renominate him. So again, it's far less of an issue for us than it is for the Republicans.
Mark, I got to ask you, too, this film tax credit flap, in your opinion, is Governor Snyder doing the right thing?
I think the bigger picture here, Gary, is this problem of balancing the budget on the backs of seniors and on working folks. I mean, it's a $2 billion shift in the tax burden in this state that he's proposing. We think that's incredibly unfair. We do need to solve the budget deficit, and we appreciate the governor making that effort. But his approach is just wrong overall in terms of how he approaches the budget.
In the issue involving the film tax credit issue, that in itself, the governor wants to really cut that back. In your opinion, on that issue, is he doing the right thing?
Again, that's not an issue that we're particularly concerned about. We're much more concerned about the overall unfairness of the way the governor is going about this. Imposing, $2 billion in taxes on seniors, on working people in this state, and lightening the burden on corporations. He has called for shared sacrifice. That doesn't sound like shared sacrifice to us.
All right, Mark Brewer, travel safely. Good to talk to you as always, and we'll keep in close touch.
Thank you very much.
The chairman of the Michigan Democratic Party, Mark Brewer, with us this morning. Donald Rumsfeld will join us in about half an hour. The former Secretary of Defense will be in Michigan today, Gary Austin, at the Gerald R. Ford Museum. We'll get a chance to talk with Rummy, some people call him. Donald Rumsfeld, his book, Known and Unknown, a memoir, is what he'll be talking about tonight. And that's a private event, but we're giving Donald Rumsfeld to everyone. If you're watching, listening, this is not private. This is very public. So stick around. It's Michael Patrick Shields, and it's Monday. 20 minutes before the hour, Michael Patrick Shields, heard all across the state of Michigan. Donald Rumsfeld's book is called Known and Unknown, a memoir, and we're going to talk with him in about 20 minutes or so. Why is it called Known and Unknown? Well, remember that he used to give these press conferences that were just entertaining as hell. I mean, it was a grim topic, war, of course, but Donald Rumsfeld had a way of sort of being a very compelling figure one way or another. And here's why. This is one of the most famous things he ever said during his term as Secretary of Defense with George W. Bush, and here's why he named his book that.
There are reports that there is no evidence of a direct link between Baghdad and some of these terrorist organizations.
There are known knowns. There are things we know we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. But there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't know.
Excuse me, but is this an unknown unknown?
I'm not.
Several unknowns, and I'm just wondering if this is an unknown.
I'm not going to say which it is.
I'm not going to say which it is. 20 minutes
right here.
before the hour. Rich Kincaid is with us, the immediate past president of Detroit Sports Broadcasters. Everybody wants to read myblog.com is where you can find him, but he's been a veteran sportscaster in the state of Michigan. How many years, Rich?
Oh, gosh. I started way back when I was still going to Michigan State. Covered my first Tigers game in 1978, so that long.
So you've seen them coming and going. And it's been a long time, though, since you've seen the Spartans beaten 2 times in the same season by the Michigan Wolverine basketball team, 14 years to be exact.
Oh, it's been a long time since I flipped on a Michigan State game and saw them trailing anybody 15-3 the way they were the Wolverines on Saturday. You know, there were 7 teams this year in the Big Ten, Michael Patrick, heading into the Big Ten tournament this weekend that finished at 9-9 or better. Of course, Michigan State, one of those teams. MSU's record against the other teams that were 9-9 and the teams that had better records than 9-9, which would be Ohio State, Purdue, and Wisconsin, was 3-8 this year. And boy, they are in a precarious position, to say the least, when it comes to making it 14 straight years in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, what do you think? I mean, is that already determined, or does the obviously, if you win the Big Ten tournament, you get in, right? But
exactly.
What are the chances?
That would be the surest route to do it. The problem for Michigan State is that after they open the tournament Thursday against Iowa, they draw Purdue, where the winner of that game, Michigan State and Iowa, gets Purdue in the next round on Friday. And it was just a couple weeks ago that Purdue humiliated Michigan State right there in East Lansing, beating them by 20 points. I'm just seeing a wide range of things. CBS Sportsline, for example, this morning, their bracketologist has Michigan State as a number 11 seed in the West. But looking at a couple of other bracketologists quoted by the Lansing State Journal, and one guy last year picked the entire field, and the other guy that they're quoting missed by just one team, and both of them have Michigan State playing in a play-in game to make it into the NCAA tournament. That's a new deal this year. The tournament consists of 64 teams, actually 68, because they're going to have 4 games. The winner of those games each gets into the tournament, and both these guys are saying that if Michigan State's going to get in, they're going to have to play in and win a play-in game.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the... do they get some consideration because of past history, to be honest? Is there politics like that in the NCAA tournament?
You know, I think actually there is, to a certain extent. If it comes down to all things being equal, and let's say Michigan State against Oakland University. Well, Michigan State travels better. Michigan State will draw more fans than Oakland U. And I'm just picking Oakland U as a team just out of midair.
Yeah.
Because they had a great conference season. They went 17-1. They may be be the team in the state of Michigan that goes the farthest in the NCAA tournament this year. But the RPI, those rankings that they use in college basketball, somewhat stunningly to me, Michigan State is still, even with the loss at Michigan, is still 48th in the nation. Well, top 64 teams make it into the NCAA tournament, so if you went on RPI alone, MSU is in there. But like I said, I've seen them ranked anywhere from a number 11 seed to being in a play-in game to not making the field at all.
They've been accused, the Spartans have, of sort of cruising at the Big Ten tournament. This time they've got something to play for, don't they?
Well, normally I would, last year, for example, I was all for Michigan State cruising through the Big Ten tournament because, the way this thing works out, you wind up playing on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, which seems to me to be no way to get ready, to get yourself up and ready for the NCAA tournament, which is going to begin the following Thursday. Well, I played 3 games in 3 nights like that. I was happy to see him win a game and then bow out of the tournament. I think that's Michigan State's only legitimate hope here, is that indeed some of those teams, some of those higher seeds, beat Ohio State, Wisconsin, or Purdue, sort of take it easy during the tournament, rest up for the NCAA tournament, and open the door for Michigan State to win the thing and then guarantee themselves a berth.
What's your gut, real quickly, on the NFL talks?
You know what? That's interesting. I did not see this coming. I thought by now we would be in the midst of a lockout. I was mildly surprised to see him extend the deadline late last week by 24 hours. Very surprised to see them extended by 1 week. To me, that they're still talking, so that's good news, I think.
All right. Good news always when we talk to Rich Kincaid. Everybody wants to read myblog.com is where you can get his take on any types of sports. And, good luck to the Spartans. Good luck to the Wolverines. Big Ten tournament starts Thursday in Indianapolis, then the NCAA tournament. And, March Madness is here. That means it's spring. We're going to talk television when we get back with Mike Hughes. Stay tuned for that. 10 minutes before the hour, Mike Hughes from MikeHughes.tv and LSJ.com. He's the television expert, totally wired into Hollywood and wired into you this morning. Good morning, Mike Hughes. How are you?
Good morning. Good.
Now, I know that you have been, complimentary of Piers Morgan, and I'm sort of jury still out, kind of leaning to the negative. Did you see the Vanity Fair story written about him?
I did, and that was interesting, and it's interesting to see how much ill will Piers Morgan has gotten from so many people. And one of the things of that is just this whole thing of, when Larry King said that he had been oversold, that may be true. People kept selling him as such a cocky, all-controlling, perfect interviewer that he's been so-so, and people really sort of resent him for that. You know, he was even cast as a villain before the show started, because remember Celebrity Apprentice?
Mm-hmm.
He won the show, but was considered kind of the villain all the way through. So that's a problem when you have an interviewer who people just don't like personally.
Well, that's the thing. And the article, I'll just give you a little sample here. Many questions torment America in its dark night of the soul, questions more urgently pressing, and yet it must be asked, how did we get stuck with Piers Morgan? Who is he? Why is he here? And is he returnable, is what the article said.
It was a very clever story, that's for sure. And you know what? There were so many choices. When you say, how did we get stuck with him? There were so many likable people who could have gotten that CNN gig, and particularly people like Soledad O'Brien, the wonderful CNN person who I talked to, and she said that she would have been glad to take the job, and others. So why do we have a guy who a surprising number of people don't like, and yet he's very, very brilliant in his own way? I don't know. Do you have to be likable to have that job? Maybe you do, because we watch you for an hour at a time. Maybe it's important. Let's face it, most TV interviewers are very likable. I mean, we didn't even dislike Mike Wallace in his prime. I mean, and most people, from Larry King to Johnny Carson to anybody who's on TV a lot, you just sort of tend to like the person.
You know, one of my theories is, and this was also referred to in the article, the show is on tape most of the time, which kind of takes some of the spontaneity out of it and the feeling of live. But Larry King always looked into the lens and said hello to you at the start of the show, and he had callers who called in, and I think he connected. Piers Morgan is sort of isolated. He doesn't ever speak to the viewer. Do you know what I mean? There might be a connection between Piers and his guest, but there is nothing between Piers and the viewer. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And a comparable thing was when David Frost took over what had been the Mike Douglas talk show for years. It was a syndicated show. And David Frost, again, a very brilliant Englishman, but he was so distant compared to Mike Douglas. Mike Douglas would sit there and look right at you and talk to you, and he was someone just like you. And you know, we don't mind our TV hosts being smarter than us. We just don't want to know they are.
Or pompous, if you're going to attach that to a British thing.
That could be what it is, too. He's not a terribly upper-class Britishman, Piers Morgan is. I mean, he points out he also has some working-class roots. He edited a very blue-collar working-class newspaper. He keeps reminding us that his brother is a soldier in Iraq and so forth. But he still comes across as an upper-class Englishman, which is something we have a kind of an instinctive thing against somehow. You know, he dresses fantastically. He comes to work in these $1,000 outfits and so forth. And in a way, that just makes it harder to relate. Lord knows it was easy to relate to Larry King sitting there with his suspenders and his cheap suit.
We lost one of the great pioneers in sports television on Friday. Frank Cherkinian passed away at the age of 84. He's been with CBS for all those years. He's the guy who first put a camera on a swivel in the middle of the infield at the Kentucky Derby, and the guy who invented the scoring system for golf above and below par. They called him the Ayatollah, and he was 84, and I had the good fortune of knowing him, knowing his friends, and spending some time with him. We almost wrote a book together at one stage. I visited him he was living in Bel Air, fancy Bel Air in California there, and we went to the golf club and talked at length about whether we could write a book together. And Al Michaels was at the table, and Mac Davis, and all the rest, and he passed away. The Ayatollah, he was the guy who was the boss for Pat Summerall and Ken Venturi and Jim Nance and Ben Wright and all of them. A real innovator.
Wouldn't it be something if people from would be transported from the early days of trying to televise a golf tournament to nowadays, see all the things that people can do with cameras and so forth?
Yeah. You know, and he had a great lesson that he taught, and we're going to talk with Ben Wright later in the program, but the lesson was, as a television director, Frank Cherkinian said, if you can't add anything to the picture, keep your mouth shut. He says, you are caption writers in a picture business.
And golf people more than any other follow that rule, don't they? Don't you wish that every sport followed as closely as golf does?
Yeah, let it tell the story once in a while. We will read your story at mikehughes.tv and talk with you soon, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Next hour, Donald Rumsfeld, the former Secretary of Defense, and we are going to talk about the economy, construction. America is hiring blue-collar workers again. That's a good sign. And we have a brand new studio sponsor here. We'll reveal all of that coming to you right after the news. My name is Michael Patrick Shields. Happy Monday. Good morning, Michigan. A very pleasant Monday to you. It's Michael Patrick Shields. And you know, because you watch and listen every day, that this studio is a very special place to us. It's a couple of blocks from the Capitol here in Michigan, on the Avenue of Michigan, in fact. And we have our first ever title sponsor for the studio, somebody who came and had a look and said, yeah, that place is special. We get lots of politicians, lots of notables, and it's accessible to everybody, to school kids. It's accessible to business people. If you want to stop by, we have a coffee house attached, and it has become a hub of activity here in Michigan and a tourist attraction, if you will, to some degree. And I'm going to introduce the gentleman right now who has decided to join us in a partnership for this studio. Welcome, Mr. Frank Farmer.
Thank you, Michael. Glad to be here.
You are the, should we play your favorite song to let everyone know who you are?
Right on.
Strike it up, Tony, if you would.
Beautiful and guaranteed, and it looks so great and so astounding. AmericanMetalRoofs.com, so beautiful and guaranteed, last through the years. AmericanMetalRoofs.com, beautiful and guaranteed, and it looks so great and so astounding. AmericanMetalRoofs.com makes your home look great. Time to celebrate.
You are the founder of American Metal Roofs, headquartered right here in Michigan.
That is correct. Out of Flint, and we have a location in Charlotte, Michigan.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to have you on. And, you know, I want to get right to our first special guest because under the new American Metal Roofs studio name, we have a very, very special first guest, and his name is Donald Rumsfeld. You know him as the former Secretary of Defense and the author of Known and Unknown, a memoir. He will be in Grand Rapids tonight. The book is #1, by the way, on the New York Times bestseller list, and the proceeds are going to veterans charities. He will be at the Gerald Ford Museum tonight. Good morning, Secretary Rumsfeld.
Good morning.
I want to just say first off that your history with Michigan goes well beyond your time with the Gerald Ford presidency. I'm studying, and I learned that you were a staff assistant to Congressman Robert Griffin back in 1959.
Well, I was indeed, and he's a fine man, talented, and he went on to become senator and minority leader of the United States Senate.
So did you get your initial appreciation for the state of Michigan all the way back then? Did you spend much time in the district when you were working for Congressman Griffin?
Well, I didn't, but I used to have a house in Castle Park, Michigan, just north of Saugatuck there.
Nice spot. I bet you there are some days you wish you were back in that house, huh?
Oh, yes, indeed. It's a lovely part of the world, and of course my home is Chicago, just on the other side of Lake Michigan.
Can you tell us a little bit about Gerald Ford, if you don't mind? After all, you were his chief of staff, you were his Secretary of Defense. You'll be in his museum just a few yards from his gravesite tonight. What was your relationship with him like?
Well, I met Congressman Gerald Ford back in 1962 when I was elected to the United States Congress. And one of the first things I did was Bob Griffin came to me and said he was helping Jerry Ford run for conference chairman of the Republican Party in the United States House of Representatives, and he wanted me to gather some votes from the freshman members who'd just been elected. So before I'd even been sworn in, Bob Griffin was after me, and I was helping Gerald R. Ford become elected the conference chairman. And then 2 years later, Bob Griffin and Charlie Goodell and Bob Ellsworth and I kind of managed Ford's campaign for the minority leadership, which propelled Gerald Ford into national prominence and undoubtedly led to his ultimately being selected as Vice President of the United States.
You know, we know a lot about your history, and we'll read a lot about it in Known and Unknown, a memoir with President George W. Bush. But what kind of president was President Ford? You were, behind closed doors with him.
Well, I talk about it in the book, and he was of all the presidents that I worked with, he was the one who was a personal friend. Having served in Congress with him, I knew him well, and when he was vice president and it looked as though Richard Nixon was going to resign, he called and asked me to, I was U.S. ambassador to NATO at the time, living in Belgium, and he called and asked me to fly back to the United States to assist him as he took over the presidency the next day. And I flew in that night and arrived in just as he was being sworn in as the only man who became president of the United States, never having run for vice president or president. And if you think back to those days, those of us that are old enough to do that, it was a tough time. The White House was in disrepute, and the reservoir of trust in the country had been drawn down. And this wonderful human being, Gerald Ford, I guess he was the only Boy Scout, Eagle Scout to ever serve in the presidency, was so honorable and so decent and so trustworthy that he simply helped to heal the nation and refill that reservoir of trust and serve the country so well and so honorably.
Can you say those? Can you attach those three qualities to George W. Bush? Honorable, decent, trustworthy.
You can. George W. Bush is very different from the public perception of him. He's much more what he seemed to be on his latest book tour after his book came out. He is informal. He's intelligent. He's probing. And he's a sensitive person. And I talk about some of the incidents in my book about his sensitivity and thoughtfulness. I should also add that he had an ability to develop good relationships with foreign leaders, and they ended up trusting him because of his manner, his demeanor, his informality.
In fact, you met with many of those world leaders, too, Vladimir Putin, Margaret Thatcher, we're going to learn about in your book, and Saddam Hussein before he was Saddam Insane, if you want to call him that. I mean, you went face-to-face with him. Why do you think, when it came down to it, he refused to let the UN weapons inspectors do their job? That was ultimately his undoing, wasn't it?
It was. I did. When I was President Ronald Reagan's Middle East envoy, I spent time meeting all over the Middle East, but I did meet with Saddam Hussein when he was president of Iraq. The only thing I can think of is that when the combat operations ended in Iraq, there was an Iraq survey group that went in to determine what went on inside of Iraq with respect to weapons of mass destruction. And what they found was that Saddam Hussein, they didn't find large stockpiles of chemical or biological weapons. What they found was that Saddam Hussein still had the people together who had the capability of developing these weapons and who had done it previously. And he still had the precursors needed, and he had dual-use facilities. The Dulfer report contends that Saddam Hussein had the ability to ramp up chemical and biological weapons within a matter of several weeks. So I'm sure that the reason he wouldn't let the UN in was that of course, to get rid of weapons of mass destruction, you have to be very careful, and it takes some time. But to develop them, you can do it rather rapidly. And he simply was afraid that at some point the inspectors would find something. So apparently he'd either disposed of them or moved them or buried them. But they were not found. but he kept the ability to rapidly develop those stockpiles, and he clearly he's a man who had used chemical weapons against his enemies. He'd used them against his own people. So he was a threat, unquestionably, and the world's a better place with him gone.
Just a minute left in our time together before you appear tonight at the Ford Museum in Grand Rapids, and that question is, let's leave Bob Woodward out of it for the moment, but when you look on the internet and you see the kind of blogging that goes on, it's vicious sometimes towards someone like you. When you're out in public, do you have people walk up to you and give you an earful?
I have, I would guess it's 40 to 1 positive.
Mm-hmm.
People walk up and want to take a picture or shake my hand or compliment me or thank me for helping to keep America safe. If you think about it, there are people demonstrating all over our country right now. They're demonstrating in Wisconsin. They're demonstrating in Ohio. They're demonstrating in Washington. That's the nature of our society. People feel strongly about things, and there's a lot of misinformation floating around out there. That's why I took 4 years and wrote the book, but I did one other thing. I created a website with over 2,500 documents on it that support the book. Mm-hmm. And I think if people will read the book, people seriously interested in history and how decisions are made, they'll find that what's in the book is accurate, and that the popular narrative out there that in some cases people believe and are bothered by is not accurate.
Thank you very much for the time, Mr. Secretary. I know it's valuable. Have fun and welcome to Michigan.
Thank you so much.
We will certainly read Known and Unknown, a memoir, #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, proceeds going to veterans charities. He is the former Secretary of Defense, man who some people say could have been president, Donald Rumsfeld in Michigan tonight. It's 19 minutes after the hour. Michael Patrick Shields live from the American Metal Roofs studios. Back in a flash. We are live this morning in our American Metal Roofs studios with Frank Farmer, the founder of American Metal Roofs Studios, and the mayor of the city of Lansing, Verge Bernero, is here too. His office is right down the street. Nice to see you.
Good morning, Michael Patrick. Good to see you.
And Chuck Clark from Clark Construction. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Those of you who watch and listen to this program know that we've been in this space now for a better part of a year, about a year and a half. And Frank Farmer has decided to partner with us and become the title sponsor of the studio, ensuring that we will be able to stay right down here in the Gillespie Group studio, a couple blocks from the mayor where all the action happens, and we sure appreciate that.
Glad to help you out. Hopefully we've got a great partnership, and I know we do for the next several years.
Well, being able to walk from the Capitol, from your office, from the governor's office, with all the lobbyists, this has been a really cool place to broadcast from. And not only that, I mean, we talk about big shots like Chuck Clark and everybody else who come in. But the studio, the coffee house is open to anyone who wants to come. So there have been occasions, Mr. Mayor, where you've been here, where you've had the opportunity to mix and mingle with some of your constituents, too.
It's a great setup. We're delighted to have you down here, and I can occasionally darken your doorstep. It's very convenient. But, yeah, for all the pals hanging out down the street, makes for great public affairs. You can grab anybody off the street, and who knows, it might just be a legislator or maybe even the governor one day.
You've been to New York, you've been to Indianapolis, you've been to Chicago. You've seen some of these storefront studios like this, ABC, NBC, the Today Show has one, WGN in Chicago, and the Indianapolis station, too. What does it mean to you in the city to have broadcasting access like this, so visible and open? Well, transparent, if you will.
Just the comparison you just made, Michael Patrick, it says this is the city. I mean, we value all the places. I was on the county commission. I mean, we've got rural areas, we've got small towns. This is the capital city. And so there's nothing that says you've arrived in the city than a storefront studio like this, window front on the street, right here across from the stadium. It gives it the air, sort of like, Silver Bells. People come down here for Silver Bells from all over the Tri-County region, all over Michigan, really. It's grown, and this is one of the sights and sounds of the city that you'd expect to see in a quote-unquote real city.
Yeah.
So it's one of the things that I think gives us that credibility and that standing as one of the great cities.
I mean, Frank, you have an office in Charlotte. You have an office in the Flint area. When you come to the state capitol, you have expectations no matter what state you're in, right?
This city has grown and it has developed over the last 5-10 years. I worked in Lansing for many, many years before we moved our offices over to Flint, and coming back here and seeing what you've done with the city is just phenomenal.
Well, I really appreciate that, and of course, it isn't me, but the private sector that is willing to invest here, and we just tried to facilitate, to get out of the way, so to speak. Mayor Hollister started a great many things when he was here. Michigan Avenue was completely different landscape, and we've really just built upon that foundation that was set. So we're fortunate to have investors, still developers that are willing to take a chance on Lansing, even in this tough economy. And that's what I remind some of my colleagues about at City Hall. That, you know, not that we just say yes to anything, but we should be grateful for those that are willing to put their hard-earned, to take personal risk, put their hard-earned savings and so on the line to invest in the city.
Yeah, done an absolutely gorgeous job. Really need you to come on over to Flint.
Well, I know they've got challenges. I know Mayor Walling is working hard. It's just, again, luckily we stand on the shoulders of giants. I come in after, you know, Mayor Hollister had a good decade to really dig in and tackle the problems. Dane Walling in Flint comes in where I think there's been more tumult
Yes.
and upheaval in City Hall. And it makes a big difference. And, of course, the challenges. The other thing is, let's not belittle the problems and the challenges. I mean, here GM has really reinvested in the city. We're fortunate. They closed some plants, but they also started some things here. And some of their flagship cars are being built here, the Cadillac CTS and the Buick Enclave, just to name a couple. And so, you know, I'm sure it would be very helpful if there was a big reinvestment in manufacturing in Flint as well.
Frank, if you haven't met Chuck Clark before, 40 years in business and major construction company, and there was good news from CNN that I'm reading right here. Construction and manufacturing workers got better news in the jobs report on Friday. I don't know if you saw this or not, but those industries added 33,000 jobs in February. What does that mean for the economy and the construction business?
Well, I can barely run a construction company here, and you know, to have me analyze what that means nationally is kind of a stretch. But there's no question that things are getting better.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know, a year ago it would be better, and now it looks like the end of this year. And but the experts, I mean, they couldn't predict the Great Recession. I don't know how they can predict the recovery. I think, though, the end of this year, next year looks good for us.
Construction was about the hardest hit industry there was.
No question.
And still a long way from full recovery.
Yeah, definitely.
Are you optimistic, though?
I'm always optimistic, you know. I got a great mayor here. He doesn't want to take credit. I can't believe that. But, he certainly deserves his fair share of it. And the Lansing itself. You know, we work all over the eastern United States.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the most productive area in the country.
No kidding.
And specifically, I would say Lansing.
I got to get in the plug here, Michael Patrick, and you know, we're very fortunate to have Clark Construction in the city, actually headquartered in the city, one of the great construction companies in Michigan, and here in the city of Lansing. But you know, we've talked about it before about regionalism, and I just got to get in a quick plug. You know, we're going to have an opportunity here. We have challenges and we have opportunities, and sometimes they're one and the same. And we've talked before about regionalism and the fact that we got to break down the barriers between cities and townships in mid-Michigan and come together as a region. Stop fighting amongst ourselves in a global economy. Come together and fight for this region, because when one wins, we all win. We're going to be faced with an even greater challenge with this new governor. He is really pushing regionalism. It's one thing that we really agree on. There are areas of disagreement. This is one where we're going to build on a partnership, because and we're going to see other regions. We are going to be challenged in Lansing, in the Lansing region, like never before. We are going to need leadership from the private sector, because sometimes we government types don't get along, and we need the business community to help remind us and guide us. But we're going to see West Michigan. I can tell you, mark my words, we're going to see West Michigan come together. The Grand Rapids region is going to come together like never before as a region. And the governor has said he's going to reward regions who come together and save money and consolidate and collaborate. We are going to be challenged as never before to do that in Lansing. And I just wanted to put in that marker, that plug, and say I hope that the business community is ready to knock our heads together, if necessary, in government to say we've got to be better and more efficient and more collaborative than ever before. Part of it is going to be a carrot and stick, where we're not going to get our revenue sharing dollars from the state unless we show more bang for the buck, unless we break down those barriers and get together. And that's going to be good for business as well, because then we sell the region as one instead of competing one township, one city against another.
Frank, how did your business, American Metal Roofs, weather the economy, the storm that you were faced with?
We were faced with a storm. As finance dried up for many homeowners, we found that we needed to diversify and bring on new product lines, and we did, and we had growth. We were very fortunate.
Diversification is maybe easier for some companies than others. How did Clark Construction go about that?
Well, ours was a twofold. Geographic. As I said, we work all over the eastern United States and 8 states right now. And the type of customers we serve. And we broadened that. Without that, who knows? It worked well for us, but this is a tough economy. This is a tough economy. Back to what the mayor said, this regionalization is so important for our area. I believe that Lansing is positioned better than any community in our state for growth. And we've done a lot of right things. It would be a real shame if we couldn't put that last piece together to really excel. This community is a great community. I've been here all my life. Our company's been here all its life. We want to see it grow, and this regionalism is not the last piece, but is currently the most important piece.
Let's bring in Bob Filka. You all know him. He's on the other end of our line at 32 minutes after the hour. Bob Filka is the CEO of the Michigan Association of Home Builders. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Michael Patrick.
If it's true that America is hiring blue-collar workers again, construction jobs, that kind of thing, are we seeing a revival of the real estate industry? Are people beginning to build homes again?
Well, you can sense a pulse, yes. I mean, things are very modestly starting to come back, and we're projecting about a 16.5% increase in new construction for the state this year over last.
What does that mean, Frank, to your business? Are you dealing with new housing starts or existing homes mainly?
Our business is mainly from existing, although we will see a push. There's a lot of pent-up energy as we see new homes being built, and those with money that have been sitting there and planning generally will gravitate towards a permanent roof.
Mr. Mayor, do you speak to the governor fairly often or at all?
Not often, but I have had that opportunity, and we've had the opportunity to meet with his staff as well.
Right across the street, after all.
Yep, and we've had very productive discussions. As I said, this is budget time, and so just like there will be a lot of things people can disagree with me about as we put our budget forward for the city, these are tough times. There's plenty to disagree about if that's what you want to do. My focus has been, we're the capital city. We need to work hand in glove with state government. Whether it's a Republican, Democrat governor, we need to be working hand in glove with that governor as the capital city. And so I've got my mayor's hat on, happily so. I'm delighted to have a great job, and my job is to try to find areas of agreement and where we can complement state government. Even as state government shrinks, there may well be opportunity for Lansing if you think about it. Because if you think about the state government as a far-flung operation, obviously statewide with offices and operations all over the state, if state government decides to contract or must contract, then it may well contract right into Lansing. So again, we have to have that close relationship, and we do. And so we've been very fortunate to build a partnership with the governor, with his administration. So we're trying to focus on areas that we can build on, rather than ideological differences. Like I say, one of the big pushes is regionalism, and he wants to see more efficiency out of local government. Well, we've been doing that for 5 years, except one area where I have not had much success, admittedly, is this area of collaboration and bringing the community, bringing the region together. And now there's going to be a big impetus from state government. As you know, the governor has basically taken away revenue sharing for all cities and townships, the statutory portion, and said we've got to earn that back. And one of the ways that we're going to be measured is how well we collaborate and where we consolidate where we can to save money. And so now more than ever, we have a chance to be ingenious, to be inventive, to be innovative, if we can. And I hope that we will be up to the challenge, because I know, like I say, in Grand Rapids, they are getting ready for something big.
Chuck, Frank, let's all be ingenious. Should we?
Oh, that'd be great.
Why not? Thank you very much for being here and for sharing some of that good news. Chuck Clark, the CEO of Clark Construction, Frank Farmer, the founder of American Metal Roofs, and the mayor of the city of Lansing, Burge Monero. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael Patrick.
It's Michael Patrick Shields back in 4 minutes. Welcome back to the program. We are in the American Metal Roofs studio right here a couple blocks from the Capitol with the CEO, Frank Farmer. Good morning to you again, sir.
Good morning, Michael Patrick.
It's been a parade of business this morning in here this morning.
We've got a great lineup here. all these beautiful women here now. This is going to be great.
Well, you've had Donald Rumsfeld, you've had the mayor of the city of Lansing, Chuck Clark, and we're talking about construction and real estate, and all of a sudden you start to say, that's kind of a man's business, isn't it?
But if I could have my choice of sitting next to the mayor of these three.
Ladies, would you please, these are three titans from the business. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Jennifer Panning, President, Artisan Tile Inc.
Artisan Tile Incorporated. Artisan Tile, by the way, Frank, did the floors at the Detroit Metro Airport. Terrazzo, right, and tile?
Yep, the North Terminal and the tile and the bathrooms and.
You'd presume that's a man's deal, right?
You would think so.
Not so. Madam,
Hi, I'm Susan Hankspa, and I'm with C4 Global Incorporated.
what does
and
C4 Global do?
It is a consulting firm, international.
In
and,
what in what area? What business?
Through it's with what we do is we connect and we form partnerships and relationships to grow businesses throughout the United States.
And you're connected with Mishta.
Yes, but that is not affiliated with. I am an ambassador for the Lansing Regional Chamber as well.
Sure.
And that is not affiliated with Mishta.
Certainly. And we're familiar with Marcia Zimmerman from Dart Development. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Let's start with you. Do you think that there's reason to be optimistic about the economy, and explain the scope of Dart Development's business?
Okay. Well, just to start off, I would say yes, most definitely there is reason to be optimistic. And I think that falls into kind of what we do. We own, develop, and manage industrial parks across the U.S. Specifically here in Michigan, we have one in Lansing, one in Wixom. And in the past 3 months, we have leased over 60,000 square feet. We just closed on 2 deals here out at Oakwood Executive Park, which is off of Jolly and Pine Tree in Lansing. One was for 10,000 square feet. The other was for 18,000 square feet. We have a few other things in play. We're looking at putting up another building this spring because we're out of space.
It has been shocking, though, over the past couple of years to see the empty storefronts, the empty office spaces, the dark windows.
There is a lot of empty office space. You're right. You're right to say that. We have an abundance of office space around here, and as companies continue to streamline their businesses and need less office, people work remotely from home or coffee shops, like we often see here.
Yeah, but there are people in their laptops all day long in there.
Exactly. So, I mean, people, you need less office space. So what happened, years back in the early 90s is when people built out this office space. They built it out for 10 private offices, things like that, large office space, open office space for cubicles, and we just don't have that as much anymore.
Jennifer Panning, every time I go through the airport, because I'm a travel writer, Frank, so I travel a lot, right? And I always send a text and say, I'm walking on your floor right now at the airport, and Jennifer writes me back and says, tell them to build another airport. How bad did your business, Artisan Tile, suffer during the economic crash, if at all, and how did you get creative, and where do you stand now?
You know, last year was a tough year for us, but our sales were down, and this year looks much better. We're very fortunate in that we have great people that work for us. We're very efficient, and we kind of grew our business by doing the geographic increase as well. We started looking at work a couple of years ago, just a little further north, further west, further south, places maybe where we hadn't worked in the past. But being in Brighton, it's a great location. You can get anywhere in the state in a couple of hours. So,
interesting question to ask Frank and Jennifer. Are people looking for price now when you go into the bidding process? Is that the number one thing they're looking for, or is quality still important, Frank?
They all start with price.
Do they?
But really, when we're done and we start talking about quality, they really come back to wanting it done right. And that is so important. The only people that can afford to have low price are the rich, because they can afford to do it again.
Yeah, we have always seen a very high demand for quality work, and a lot of the work that we do is public bidding, federal projects, state projects. So you have to keep your pencil sharp, and that's pretty much the way that it is. And of course, you just have to expect that you'll have that quality, that you can maintain that quality. So you find ways to do things more efficiently. You stay on top of the technology and what's going on, and work with your suppliers and your employees. And
Frank, Gene Young is on the other end of our line, one of your customers at American Metal Roofs. Good morning, Gene.
Good morning.
You made an investment in an American Metal Roof with Frank that was more expensive than the roof you could have put on your house. Why did you choose the quality over the price point?
Well, I think quality always sells over price, but once you see one of their roofs, the roof itself speaks for itself, sells itself, actually. You know, we live on waterfront, and it used to be a time when people would walk up and say, wow, look at that view. Now people walk up and say, wow, look at that roof.
So she made an investment, Gene did, Frank, in something that's going to last a long, long time. In the last 20 seconds, is that a message that you can send out to anybody in business right now? It's that you may be tempted to go the cheap route in terrazzo and in office space, but resist?
You're always going to look for ways to keep the cost down, but the quality has to be there. It lasts a lifetime.
All right, ladies.
Thanks for the kind words, Gene.
Indeed. Another powerful woman. Thank you, ladies, for being here with us this morning. Let's hope you're right with your optimism for the economy.
Thank you for having us.
That's all we can do is smile and get past it all, and we'll do that in 4 minutes when we get back here. Television viewers, stay with us. Radio listeners, there's more of this in just a couple of minutes. Oh, we're having some fun this morning because we have an official studio sponsor, the American Metal Roof Studio. You can go to AmericanMetalRoofs.com if you want to learn more about it or connect. And I guess we ought to learn what these metal roofs are all about. We've had such a parade of people here through this morning, Frank. What is an American Metal Roof?
An American Metal Roof, quite simply, is a spectacular, beautiful-looking, permanent metal roof on a home that your neighbors would be envious of. It's the best way I can put it.
Do most homes have metal roofs?
No, unfortunately.
Is it new? It's a new development?
No, not really. Metal roofs really go back a couple hundred years.
How come so few have them?
Well, as we came out of the wars and we started building a lot of houses, really the inexpensive product to build all the tract houses was asphalt, and that's where asphalt really got its hold. But over the years, as the quality of those asphalt roofs have diminished, because they've pulled oil out of the shingles, a typical roof will replace in 10, 12 years. People want permanent, and as the baby boomers have aged, they're tired of the maintenance, they're tired of all the challenges, and want to be maintenance-free.
So if a typical roof lasts 10, 12 years, how long does a metal roof last?
A couple hundred.
A couple hundred?
It's permanent.
In other words, you put this on and you're done.
You're done. You know, you think about building. If you put a temporary basement underneath the house and you had to jack it up every 10, 12 years,
yeah,
that'd pretty much upset you.
Not for me.
But we've become used to that. That's something that we think we have to replace. It's not. It's not a light bulb. It can be. Should be a permanent part of the house.
Is there a cost savings in terms of the thermal nature of the house? In other words, does a metal roof hold the heat in better or keep the house cooler?
A metal roof, you have many choices in materials. You go steel, you go copper, go aluminum. When you go to the eco-friendly metals like aluminum, you're going to find that they're extremely energy efficient. They'll reflect 30-40% of the sun's heat, which will reduce the air conditioning bills. In an American Metal Roof, we put a high-flow vent on, which will super dry the insulation in the attic and reduce the heat bills of the house by about 10% or more.
Are they stylish?
They are stunning.
Really?
They're more than
I'm trying to
stylish.
picture it. Yeah, if you're watching on Fox 47, you can see some examples of what it looks like. But they are, what color?
We have a rainbow of colors.
You
We have about 20 different styles.
No kidding.
And about 40 different colors.
And they can look like shingles, too?
They can look like asphalt shingles. They can look like slate. They can look like tile. They look like cedar shake.
And copper?
Copper's absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
Love to have a bunch of copper roofs put on.
Yeah,
Sure. That'd be
that's great stuff. AmericanMetalRoofs.com. Dawn Buchanan is on the other end of our line. She is a happy customer, I think so, of Frank Farmer and American Metal Roof. Good morning, Dawn. Dawn is, we'll reconnect with her. She's having trouble connecting there. And you brought some people right here to our American Metal Roofs studio. These are fellas that work with you. What kind of a guy is Frank to work for, Bill Susswitz?
Susowitz.
Susowitz. That's easy for you to say.
It is. That happens several times a day. Frank, he's been a mentor, and it took me quite a while to basically warm up to the feeling that he's going to take care of us. And if I had to pick another company to work for, it would be American Metal Roofs all over again.
We also have Mike Griffin with us. His last name's a little easier to say. Here from the Grand Rapids area, as I understand it.
That is correct.
Can you just lean forward into those microphones, gentlemen, if you would, and tell me from your perspective. You're out there. You meet with people. They are, as we were talking about in the previous segment, cost conscious. But this is a permanent choice. What is the cost of a typical, let's say, average homeowner when they put on a shingle roof versus a metal roof?
Well, metal roof can typically run about 3 times the cost. But in
Does
the
that shock people?
Initially it can, yeah, but in the long run, when they realize how much they're going to continue to spend over and over on temporary solutions, the permanent solution is cheaper in the long run.
How many years would you have to live in a house to achieve, to justify the cost?
Some of our customers have purchased these systems and moved and noticed some appreciation in the value of the property right off the bat.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that.
Others are moving into them and retiring and never having to worry about it again.
So the value of your home can go up because of the quality of the roof.
Absolutely.
Dawn is with us now. Dawn Buchanan, which city are you in, ma'am?
I'm in Kalkaska.
Kalkaska, and you have an American Metal roof on your home?
Yes, I do. I've had it for about 2 years.
What color is it?
It is a dark brown.
Did you have people noticing the neighbors and things like that? Were they curious about what you were up to?
Yes. I had quite a problem with my roof. I had shingle to begin with, and it wasn't vented right, so every couple of years it would start leaking again. So I knew I needed something different, drastically different.
And that's what you got, something drastically different that you don't have to worry about. What about it, Frank, when you talk about rain and snow and sun? How do these roofs weather?
They do a fantastic job. When we think about the snow, it's one of the great attributes of this roof, and that the snow slides off. And when our customers get a metal roof, they really don't understand what's going to happen. And what they learn to find out is that they're going to hear the thundering roaring of snow coming off of their roof. And the very first time it startles them, then it becomes a very comforting sound, because they know that they can sit there with a warm cup of coffee and their roof empties, and they look across the street and the neighbor's up there shoveling his roof.
Yeah.
So
and
they get an opportunity
bearing all that weight too.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a absolutely phenomenal roof to have on a residential home.
It's AmericanMetalRoofs.com.
AmericanMetalRoofs.com.
Plural. And you can connect with Frank through AmericanMetalRoofs.com. We are live in our American Metal Roof studio right here on Michigan Avenue, but you service all over the state, yes?
Entire state of Michigan, all the way up to Houghton, Michigan.
All right, we'll continue. Television viewers, we'll see you tomorrow. Radio listeners, stay right where you are. We've got a weather report coming your way next. It's Michael Patrick Shields.